Ray had never seen a sky like this before. Dot above him stretched two suns, one golden, the other pale blue, casting a soft light over the alien world of Tyruvia. The trees were tall and curved like arches, their leaves wide and glowing faintly in the twilight. A warm breeze carried the scent of something sweet and earthy. He had only arrived 2 days ago as part of the Earth-Tyruvian Peace Program, an exchange created to build trust between species. Ray had been chosen to stay with a Tyruvian native, a young woman named Lunari. She was calm, quiet, and moved with a grace he couldn't explain. Her pale skin shimmered softly in the light, and her small elf-like ears twitched when she listened. Ray felt awkward around her. Not because she was strange, but because she wasn't. There was a stillness in her that made him feel like he was always rushing, always loud. Always too human. That evening, Lunari approached him as he sat outside their vine-covered home. She wore a long teal wrap that flowed with the wind, her silver-white hair tied loosely behind her back. She spoke in her soft, clear voice. "Tonight we visit the pond." Ray looked up, surprised. He had heard of the sacred pond during orientation. It was a private place, rarely shared with outsiders. "Are you sure?" he asked. Lunari nodded. "You have been respectful. You have listened. The spirits may welcome you." He stood up, brushing off his pants. "Okay, should I bring anything?" She paused, looking at him with those glowing violet eyes. "You must come with nothing. No cloth, no metal. No shoes, only yourself. To enter the water with anything else is an offense." Ray blinked. "You mean I have to be completely?" She nodded again. "Yes, undress for the pond or offend the spirits of my world." There was no threat in her voice, just calm certainty. Ray didn't want to be rude, but the request made his heart pound. He hesitated. "Will others be there?" he asked carefully. "Some," she replied, "but you will not be judged. Our way is different. The pond sees truth, not shame." He didn't know what to say, but something in her gaze told him this was important, not just to her, but to her people. A sign of trust. After a moment, he gave a small nod. "Okay, I'll do it." Lunari seemed pleased. She turned and began walking toward the forest. Ray followed. The path to the sacred pond was quiet. Thick vines curled around the glowing trunks of trees, and bioluminescent bugs danced in the air like stars. As they walked, Ray noticed how the forest seemed to grow more peaceful with each step. No sound of birds, no rustling animals, just wind and soft footsteps. Lunari didn't speak much, but when she did, her words carried weight. "This pond is not like your rivers," she said. "It is not just water. It remembers. It listens. Some say it breathes." Ray looked ahead, trying to see the pond through the trees. "And the spirits? What are they?" "They are old," she replied simply. "Older than us. Older than your world, maybe. They live in the water and in silence." He didn't know if it was metaphor or truth, but the way she said it made him believe either could be possible. After a long walk, they reached a clearing. There, in the center, lay a pond. So still it looked like glass. Moonlight from both moons touched the surface gently, and soft blue light pulsed from beneath the water. Around the edge, a few Tyruvian figures knelt in silence, their bodies calm and bare, partly submerged. Ray's breath caught. It was peaceful almost. "Sacred." Lunari turned to him. "Here," she said, pointing to a smooth stone by the shore. "Leave your things. Then step in when you are ready." Ray looked at the pond, then back at her. She didn't look away. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't shy. This was simply part of her world. Slowly, he took off his jacket, then his boots. He hesitated when he got to the rest, but the air felt warm and no one looked his way. Everyone was focused on the water. With a deep breath, Ray let go of the last of his clothes and stepped forward. His foot touched the pond. It was warm, not like a bath, but like body heat. As he waded in slowly, a strange calm came over him. The water reached his knees, then his waist, then his chest. He stopped where Lunari had told him to, just before the center. The light from beneath the water swirled gently around him. He looked at his arms. It almost seemed like the light was reading him, searching. Then he looked at Lunari, who now stood at the edge of the pond. Her eyes half closed. "You came with an open heart," she whispered. "They know." Ray didn't fully understand what was happening, but he didn't feel afraid anymore. In fact, he felt something release inside him, like a knot had come undone in that quiet moment under alien moons. Ray understood something very old. Respect was not about rules. It was about surrender. The pond shimmered softly around him. Ray stood quietly in the warm water, the surface still around him. The pond didn't feel like normal water. It wasn't cold. It wasn't moving. It felt alive. He looked around at the others in the pond. They were all calm, eyes closed, their breathing slow. No one spoke. No one moved. It was like time had stopped. Lunari sat on a flat stone near the edge, watching with soft eyes. Her expression wasn't cold or strict, it was peaceful, like she trusted the pond more than anything. Even more than herself. Ray closed his eyes too. He didn't know what was supposed to happen. He wasn't sure if he should be feeling something, seeing something, or just staying quiet, but then it began. A soft pulse passed through the water. It didn't make waves, it was a feeling. Like a soft hum inside his chest. His heart beat slower. His thoughts grew quieter. All the stress from traveling, from trying to fit in, from being different, it faded. Suddenly his mind was filled with images, but they weren't clear pictures. They were emotions, memories, but not his. He saw a group of Tyruvian children, laughing in the water, their hands glowing with soft blue light. He saw someone crying beside the pond, alone, as the water wrapped gently around their legs in comfort. He saw Lunari, maybe younger, kneeling in the pond, whispering a promise to something unseen. Ray opened his eyes, gasping. The water hadn't moved. Lunari was still there. The others were still calm. He looked down. The pond was glowing again, just slightly, and the light was circling him. He whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "What are you?" Lunari stood and walked slowly toward the edge. "You saw something," she said gently. Ray nodded. "Memories, feelings, but they weren't mine." She knelt. "The pond remembers every touch, every voice. It shares those memories when it chooses. You must have made a connection." He looked at his hands. They tingled like they were still part of the water. "Is that normal?" he asked. Lunari tilted her head. "No, not for most. But sometimes the pond speaks more clearly to visitors who carry pain." Ray frowned. "Pain?" She looked at him. "You hide it well, but the pond sees what we do not." Ray felt a strange mix of emotion, respect, fear, wonder. "What do I do now?" Lunari smiled faintly. "You return to rest? The spirits will follow you now, not to harm, but to know you better." The walk back through the forest was quieter than before. The lights of the trees seemed softer. The ground felt warmer. And Ray couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. He glanced at Lunari. "Do you really believe they're spirits?" She nodded. "Not like ghosts, not like gods, something in between. They were here before us. They watched the skies, long before we learned to fly." Ray rubbed the back of his neck. "Earth has stories like that. Spirits in water, trees with memories, but we call it myth." Lunari gave him a knowing look. "Some myths are just truths waiting to be remembered." That night, back in their shared home, Ray sat on his floor cushion, staring at the fire bowl. Its orange flames danced slowly, casting soft shadows across the walls. He hadn't spoken much after returning. He was still thinking. Lunari brought him a warm drink made from local herbs. "You should rest," she said softly. Ray took the cup and nodded. "I will, just thinking." She didn't press him. She only sat across from him and watched the fire. But when Ray finally lay down to sleep, something strange happened. As soon as his eyes closed, he was back at the pond, but it wasn't the same. The sky was dark and the water was moving. Waves. Small but steady. The trees leaned in closer and strange whispers filled the air, not words, but feelings, warnings, regret, hunger. He stepped into the water again, even in his dream. But this time the glow was red instead of blue. A shape rose from the center of the pond. Tall, wide, not fully formed. It looked like a shadow made of water. Ray couldn't move. He couldn't speak. The shadow bent toward him and whispered something. He didn't understand. It wasn't in Tyruvian. It wasn't in English. Then the whisper changed. Became clearer. He disrespected us. Ray gasped and woke up. His body was covered in sweat. His heart was racing. He sat up quickly, breathing hard. Lunari rushed to his side. What happened? She asked. I had a dream, he said. Something was in the pond. It said someone disrespected it. She went very still. Was the glow red? She asked slowly. Ray nodded. Luna I stood and walked toward the window, looking at the dark forest beyond. The pond has two faces, she whispered. Peace and punishment, Ray swallowed. What does it mean? It means the spirits have accepted you, she said, still looking outside. But they've shown you something hidden. Something old. She turned to face him. Someone once angered them. Someone they have not forgotten. Ray looked at the firelight dancing on the wall again. The calm of earlier was gone, whatever the spirits were. They weren't just peaceful watchers. They had rules. And someone maybe long ago had broken them, but why show Ray? And what did they want him to do? The morning sun had barely touched the sky when Ray stepped outside the quiet home. The air felt heavier than usual. The trees, usually swaying gently, stood still. Even the insects seemed silent. Lunari stood a few steps ahead, her long silver hair glowing under the early light. She didn't turn when she spoke. You saw something the pond did not show to others, Ray nodded slowly. It felt like a warning. She turned to him now, her eyes filled with concern. It was... They walked together through the village. Other Tyruvians greeted Lunari with quiet nods, but looked at Ray with curious eyes, some warm, some unsure. They had heard what happened at the pond. Word spread fast when the spirit spoke. Lunari led Ray to a round stone building in the center of the village. Vines wrapped around its walls, and a faint humming sound came from within. This is the Hall of Echoes, she said softly. It holds memories, ones that do not fade. Inside, the walls were covered in carvings and old drawings made from colored clay. Some showed peaceful scenes of people bathing in the pond. Others showed storms, fire, and a figure surrounded by dark mist. Luna, I pointed to one of the darker carvings. A long time ago, a visitor came to Tyruvia. He was not like you. He ignored our ways. He took from the forest. He stepped into the sacred pond wearing weapons and armor. Ray stared at the carving. The figure had sharp edges drawn around him, and the pond was full of waves and red light. What happened to him? Ray asked. No one truly knows, Lunari answered. He entered the pond and never came out. Ray felt a chill. And the spirits still remember him? She looked at him gently. They remember everything. Later that day, Ray walked alone through the edge of the forest. He needed time to think. Why had the spirits shown him that vision? Did they think he would repeat the same mistake? Or was there something else they wanted? He stopped near a stream, sat on a rock, and stared at the moving water. It looked so simple, yet it held so much power on this world. Suddenly, a quiet voice spoke behind him. You are not like the other one. Ray turned to see an old Tyruvian man standing there. He wore dark green robes, and his skin was marked with faded blue-line signs of a spiritual guide. You saw him, didn't you? The old man asked. Ray nodded. In a dream. The pond showed me. The elder sat beside him slowly. The one who came before you had a hard heart. He saw our customs as weakness. When we warned him, he laughed. The pond does not forget laughter made at its peace. Ray was silent for a while. Why me? He finally asked. Why now? Because, the elder said, looking into the trees, sometimes the spirits need a second chance, to test trust, to see if our ways still matter. You came with respect? That matters. Ray turned to him. What happens if I fail? The old man gave a soft smile. Then the pond will decide. That evening, Lunari and Ray sat near the fire again. He shared what the elder had told him. Lunari listened carefully, then spoke in a quiet voice. There's one more thing you must know, she said. The spirits never show something without reason. If they showed you the memory of the one who disrespected them, they may be asking you to help fix what was broken. Ray raised his eyebrows. Fix it? How? She stood up and walked to the corner of the room, pulling down an old scroll. Unrolling it carefully, she showed Ray a mappa drawing of the pond's inner chamber. "There is a path beneath the pond," she whispered. "A hidden place. It was sealed long ago. Only someone accepted by the spirits can open it." Ray looked at the map, feeling a strange pull in his chest. "You think that's why I saw the red glow? They want me to go there?" She looked at him with calm certainty. "Yes, but not alone." He stared at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we'll go together." They planned to visit the pond again the next night. Lunari warned him it had to be done when both moons touched the water's surface, an event that happened once every few weeks. It would happen tomorrow. That night, Ray didn't sleep much. He kept thinking about the spirit's whisper. He disrespected us. And now, Ray was walking toward the same place the man had gone, but he wasn't afraid. Not exactly. He felt ready. The next evening came quickly. Ray and Lunari walked silently through the forest again. The path looked familiar, but now it felt heavier. As if the trees themselves were watching. When they reached the pond, it was empty. No other villagers. No sound. Just water, and the reflection of two moons slowly touching the surface. Lunari handed Ray a small stone. It had the shape of a tear and glowed faintly blue. "This will show the way," she said. "But only if the spirits allow it." Ray nodded. He removed his clothes again and stepped into the pond. Lunari followed, this time as he stepped deeper. The water didn't just glow around him. It parted. A narrow path beneath the surface opened, leading into the pond's heart. Lunari took his hand. "They remember," she said. "Now let's remind them that not all humans forget respect." Together, they walked into the glowing water and into the memory of a world that was waiting for healing. Ray held tightly to Lunari's hand as they stepped deeper into the glowing path beneath the pond. The water didn't feel like water anymore. It felt light. It didn't pull them down. Instead, it gently guided them forward as if unseen. Hands were showing the way. The tunnel glowed with soft blue patterns, swirling along the walls like waves drawn in the air. Each step was silent. Their feet didn't even touch solid ground, yet they moved forward with ease. Lunari whispered, "This place exists between water and memory. You're walking through what the spirits remember." Ray nodded, not wanting to speak too loud. Even his own breath felt heavy in this space, like it didn't belong. After a few minutes, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber under the pond. It wasn't filled with water, but with mist and dim blue light. In the center stood a tall stone platform surrounded by smaller stones arranged in a circle, and there, on the central platform, was a figure. Ray stepped forward slowly. The figure wasn't moving. It looked like a statue, perfectly still, eyes closed, arms at its sides, but Ray knew right away what he was looking at. "A human," he whispered. "That's a human." Lunari stepped beside him. "Yes, the first visitor, the one who disrespected the pond." Ray moved closer. The figure was wearing old, rusted armor, earth-made, but damaged and cracked. Vines had started to grow over it. The face was pale, silent, like stone, yet peaceful. "He's not alive," Ray said. "But he's not completely gone either," Lunari nodded. "His body was kept by the spirits. As a reminder, as a warning." Ray noticed carvings on the ground around the platform. They weren't Tyruvian symbols. They were human words. He bent down and wiped the dust from one. It read, "Forgive me, I didn't listen." Ray's heart tightened. He tried to say sorry. Lunari looked down. "But the pond listens only to truth, not words." "Maybe." His heart changed too late. Suddenly the air shifted. The blue mist began to swirl slowly, forming shapes. Faces, eyes, whispers filled the chamber again. Ray felt a deep chill in his chest, but not from fear. It was something else. The spirits had awakened. A voice filled the room. It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. "You have come, not to take. Not to challenge, but to understand." Ray swallowed hard. "Yes," he said softly, "I didn't come to hurt this world." The mist moved around the ancient figure on the platform. This one came with pride. He wore metal and forgot respect. We showed him stillness. Ray stepped closer. "What?" Do you want from me? There was silence. Then a soft hum. Show us that humans can change. That memory can become peace. Ray turned to Lunari. What do I do? She reached into the satchel she had brought and pulled out a small wooden bowl. Inside it was water from the pond's edge and a few flower petals. Offer it, she said. Gently, but not with your hands, with your heart. Ray knelt beside the platform. He placed the bowl on the stone and lowered his head. I don't know the right words, he said. But I came with an open heart. I came with respect. Let this offering be my truth. The chamber fell quiet, then a soft blue light rose from the bowl. The petals lifted into the air and dissolved like dust. The mist swirled again, brighter now. We accept. Ray looked up. The statue's face had changed. It now wore a faint smile. The vines loosened. The armor cracked further, then crumbled gently into dust. The figure faded, not vanished. Released. Luna R.I. stepped beside Ray. Her eyes were full of light. You did it, she whispered. You gave him peace. Ray stood slowly, looking around the chamber. The blue mist was clearing. The walls shimmered with new patterned spirals, stars, and wave shapes of hope. The voice returned one last time. You may leave, but carry us with you, always. As they walked back up the glowing tunnel, the water began to feel like water again. The light faded, but the warmth stayed. When they rose from the pond's surface, the stars above had shifted. The twin moons were higher in the sky, casting light over the trees. The forest around them felt different, calmer, lighter, like the whole world had taken a deep breath. Ray sat on the pond's edge, catching his breath. Lunari sat beside him. I can't believe that happened, he said. She smiled gently. You believed enough to enter. That was enough. Ray looked at her. Why me? Lunari looked at the water. Because you didn't come to change us. You came willing to be changed. They sat in silence for a while. Then Ray said, The spirits forgave that man. Do you think they'll forgive us too someday? For all the mistakes we've made? On Earth? Lunari didn't answer right away. Then she said, The spirits do not forget, but they do not hold anger forever. They wait for truth. They wait for those who are ready. Ray nodded slowly. Maybe that was what the universe was waiting for, not perfection, not power, but honesty. He stood up and offered Lunari his hand. Let's go home. And together they walked back into the forest, leaving behind the pond but carrying its memory in their hearts. The next morning, the village of Tyruvia woke with a stillness that felt different, peaceful, but alert. Word had already spread. The spirits accepted the human. Some believed it. Others doubted. A few elders whispered that the silence of the pond meant a deeper test was coming. Ray, sitting quietly beside the fire in Lunari's home, felt it too. Though he had seen peace in the hidden chamber, though the forgotten human had been released, there was something unsettled inside him. He knew the spirits weren't finished yet. Lunari entered the room with a small scroll in her hands. The elder spoke this morning, she said softly. They believe you should complete the trial of silence. Ray looked up. What is that? She sat beside him. It's the final step. A way to show full harmony with the spirits. No words, no movement, no thoughts forced. You return to the pond. And wait, Ray frowned. Wait for what? She looked into the fire. Whatever they wish to show you. He stayed quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. When? Tonight, she said. When the moons cross again. That evening, as the village quieted and the sky grew soft with starlight, Ray prepared. He removed anything that might carry noise or weight: his boots, his belt, his outer shirt. Lunari met him by the edge of the forest. She gave him a single stone pendant, blue and smooth, marked with Tyruvian symbols. Hold this, but say nothing, she instructed. It connects your silence to the pond. When it warms, the trial is over. Ray took the pendant and nodded. He didn't need to speak. His heart already felt full of meaning. They walked together to the pond in the dark. The pond waited, still and wide beneath the double moons. Not a sound touched the trees. Not even the wind dared to move the water. Ray stepped forward. He undressed. As before, slowly and respectfully. Not because he had to, but because it was right. The spirits had given him memories, whispers, even a purpose. This was his way of giving back. He held the pendant tightly in one hand and stepped into the water. Each step was slower than the last. Knee-deep, waist-deep, chest-deep. Then, still. Ray closed his eyes. No words, no thoughts, only breath. Only. Feeling minutes passed, or maybe hours, Ray couldn't tell. The pond had taken away time. His thoughts tried to wander memories of Earth, of home, of a childhood laugh, but he let them go. Then he saw her, not Lunari, not the ancient human. Someone else. A Tyruvian woman, tall and wise, her skin glowing faintly gold. Her eyes were closed, her arms open. She stood on the water's surface. Ray did not speak. He only watched. She opened her eyes. Your silence is your voice, she said. You carry pain, but not blame. You carry fear, but not hatred. She stepped closer, still floating above the pond. Ray stood still, breathing slowly. Long ago your kind hurt this place, she continued, but you have shown something rare, the will to listen. Ray felt the pendant in his hand begin to warm. The water accepts you. The memory welcomes you. He opened his hand, and the pendant glowed gently. The spirit smiled, once small, but kind, and vanished into soft blue mist. Ray opened his eyes. The water shimmered around him. The trial was over. Back at the edge of the pond, Lunari waited. She stood tall and silent, her arms folded across her chest. Watching the moons above, she heard the soft movement of water before she saw him. Ray stepped out slowly, holding the now bright pendant in his hand. Lunari gave a deep nod. They've spoken. Ray nodded once in return. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. By morning, the village gathered. Ray stood before them, clean and calm, the pendant around his neck. Lunari stood beside him. The elders formed a circle. One elder, with pale green markings on her forehead, stepped forward. You entered our sacred pond. You walked the memory path. You stood in silence with the spirits. We have heard, and we have seen. She raised her hand and pointed the staff toward Ray's chest. The spirits have chosen to remember. You not as one of harm, but as one of peace. The villagers began to chant a soft tone. Not words, just feeling. A hum of welcome. With that, Ray was no longer just a visitor. He was now part of their story. Later that day, Lunari and Ray walked quietly through the forest. She smiled softly. Not many complete the trial of silence, even among my people. Ray glanced at her. I didn't know if I could do it. You didn't try to win the spirits, she said. You just respected them. That is all they ever wanted. Ray looked up at the sky, 2 moons still hanging like guardians above. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. Something had changed in him, not just because of the pond, but because he chose to listen. Days passed peacefully after the trial of silence. The skies above Tyruvia remained calm, and the sacred pond shimmered gently every night as if the spirits were still whispering to the water. Ray now walked through the village without confusion. In the eyes of the Tyruvians, the stares he once received had turned into respectful nods. Children no longer hid behind their parents but smiled at him shyly. The elders greeted him as an equal, not as an outsider, for the first time since leaving Earth. Ray felt like he truly belonged. He had come to this planet as part of a cultural program, a mission, a task. Now, it felt like a home. One morning, Lunari led Ray to a quiet clearing at the edge of the forest. There stood a single stone, carved with old Tyruvian symbols and wrapped in soft flowering vines. At its base, a blue glow pulsed softly from a pool no wider than a hand. This, she said gently, is the well of naming. Ray looked at the glowing water. Naming? Lunari nodded. Only those accepted by the spirits can receive a name in our tongue. It is not a title, it is a truth. Ray stepped closer, curious. What do I have to do? Nothing more, she said. The spirits already know you. You only need to hear what they call you. Lunari reached into the pool and touched the surface. The water rose slightly and formed a small floating symbol above her hand, a glowing shape that shimmered between blue and silver. Solanu! She spoke the word slowly. Ray repeated it quietly. Solanu. It means, Lunari said, one who listens. Ray smiled. The name felt right. Simple, but full of meaning. Later that evening, as the twin moons began to rise again, Lunari and Ray walked toward the sacred pond one final time, not as strangers. Not for rituals, but to simply be present. The pond greeted them with its usual soft glow. The surface was calm, reflecting the sky above. Ray sat on the same flat stone he had rested on during his first visit. So much had changed since then. He was no longer unsure, no longer afraid. He had learned to trust the silence, and in doing so, the spirits had trusted him back. Lunari sat beside him, her gaze soft and thoughtful. You could return to Earth now, she said quietly. Your mission is complete. The program will call you back soon, Ray nodded. I know. But his heart didn't lift at the thought. Instead, a strange heaviness filled him. Lunari turned toward him. You don't want to go, he sighed. No, I don't. Earth is where I was born. But here, I feel alive in a way I never did before. She looked out over the pond. Then stay. We do not tie others with rules. You have a place here. Ray smiled faintly. Even if I'm different? You were different from the start, Lunari said, but not in a bad way. You came here willing to learn, willing to listen? That is rarer than you think. The next morning, a message arrived from Earth. A soft alert blinked on Ray's communication stone. The shuttle would return in 2 days. His report was expected. He had a choice to make. He walked to the village's edge and sat beneath a large, flowering tree. The air smelled sweet, and soft petals drifted around him. In the distance, he could see Lunari speaking to one of the elders, her voice calm and her hands gently moving with each word. He thought about everything: the dream in the pond, the spirit's voice, the forgotten human now set free. He had come here thinking he was helping another world. Instead, that world had helped him. Later that evening, he spoke with Lunari again. I'm going back, he said. Her eyes dropped slightly, but she said nothing. But not to stay, he added, only to tell them the truth. She looked up. I'll return, he said. Not as a guest, not as part of a mission, but as someone who belongs. I'll ask for peace, not just between leaders, but between people. Lunari placed her hand over his heart. Then you are Solanu in both worlds. The next 2 days passed quickly. Ray boarded the shuttle when it arrived, but he left a part of his soul in Tyruvia's forests, in the pond, and in the eyes of Lunari. When the engines hummed and the sky darkened around the ship, he looked back one last time through the window. The sacred pond shimmered in the distance, its surface calm and endless. 6 months later, the Tyruvian Earth Cultural Bridge Program was stronger than ever. New visitors arrived on Tyruvia, not with pride, but with patience. They listened, they watched. They asked before stepping. Ray returned as promised, this time, not as a stranger, but as Solanu. And when he stepped back into the forest and heard the soft wind over the sacred pond, it felt like the spirits themselves whispered, he returned. And he still listens.